The most significant thing in the world is money. It's a shocking and almost heretical assertion. After all, we are often informed that happiness is intangible. Of course, you can't buy your way to happiness on earth. But on the other hand, living in poverty will probably make you miserable. Money is the most crucial weapon we have to raise our quality of life, far from being the source of all bad. You need money, and the more the better. If you want to protect the ones you love, or if you need extra time with your children, or consider scheduling leisure activities like reading, going to the theater, and traveling to explore different cultures and nations. By now, you've probably guessed what is required for all these things. It's money. Kristy Shen, a self-made millionaire who retired at age 31, lives by that attitude. We'll be examining how she achieved it in this video book summary of her book, Quit Like a Millionaire. Principle 1. If you follow math rather than your passions, you'll be more likely to make wise choices. Steve Jobs delivered the graduating address at Stanford University in 2005. He gave the students one advice: follow your heart. The positive message spread all over the world. With the support of the great and the good, it quickly started to seem logical. After all, why on earth wouldn't you pursue your interests and do what you enjoy? I tell you why. It's frequently the incorrect decision. Take the decision that many students make each year about their course of study. That's exactly what the author, Kristy, was considering in the year 2000. She had narrowed her list of potential majors down to 3: computer engineering, accounting, and creative writing. While math advised her to pursue engineering, her heart urged her to pursue literature. Kristy took the latter's recommendation. It was a wise decision. Examine that math now. In Canada, a 4-year course of study costs roughly $40,000. Between the unpublished newcomer who makes nothing and seasoned experts like Stephen King who make millions, professional authors fall on a spectrum. However, the average salary is $17,000. The minimum wage in 2000 was $6.85 per hour, or $14,248 annually. By deducting that amount from $17,000, Kristy was able to determine how much her writing degree was actually worth, a pitiful $2,752. In contrast, an accounting degree was worth roughly $24,000 more than the minimum salary, while computer engineering brought in a stunning $40,000 more each year. But happiness cannot be measured, so no matter what the financial results, dreams must be pursued, right? Well, maybe not always. After all, you won't likely wake up thrilled about your work if it requires innovation if you don't know where your next meal is coming from. In a 2013 study that was published in Science, it was discovered that nearly all of the 19,000 participants' passions had changed dramatically over the previous 10 years. Following the math is advantageous for this reason. Ask Kristy, she now works as a freelance writer. She arrived there for the straightforward reason that she didn't need to write to pay the rent thanks to her well-paying engineering work. In other words, money gave her the starting point that finally made it possible for her to pursue her genuine passion. Principle 2. Due to her Chinese ancestry, Kristy learned that debt is a trap that needs to be avoided at all costs. You may be surprised to learn that the average Chinese person saves 38% of their salary. While the Japanese only save 2.8% of their income for a rainy day, Americans save 3.9% of their income. What's happening on, and are Chinese people just naturally thrifty? Actually, no. China has a widespread culture of corruption even before the communists took power there in 1949. You have the makings of a culture that depended on favors when you combine that with the lack of official credit channels like bank loans. People had a straightforward option when they wanted to make a large purchase: either take on a heavy personal debt and place themselves under another person's control, or save up until they had enough money to make the purchase outright. Due to this, debt in China has historically been seen more as "I own you" than "I owe you." Because of your heritage, Chinese people like Kristy are essentially conditioned to avoid debt at all costs. However, when you do the math, it turns out that attitude is a good one to have wherever you live. Consider the rule of 72, a concept that was first put forth by an Italian mathematician by the name of Luca Pacioli in the 15th century. This is how it goes. Divide 72 by the investment's return rate to see how long it will take for your money to double. Let's assume that your $1,000 investment generates a 6% return. 72 divided by 6 is equal to 12. The number of years required for that $1,000 to compound into $2,000 is represented by the last number. The balance rises over time. Your earnings generate more earnings. The rule of 72 is your ally if you're an investor, your worst adversary if you're a debtor. Consider purchasing a $1,000 TV on credit. The interest rate will typically be approximately 20%. The time it takes for your debt to double is equal to 3.6 when you divide 72 by 20. It will have practically quadrupled after 7 years. When you put it that way, it starts to make a lot of sense why the Chinese tradition of paying off personal obligations during the new year on pain of being cursed with 12 months of misery. But don't be alarmed, the intention is not to frighten you. We'll look at how you can pay off your personal debts in the next section. Principle 3. Consumer debt is a financial emergency that requires immediate attention. Debt is a vampire that eats your blood. It dries you out. Even worse, it makes you afraid of the sun, keeping you inside in a never-ending cycle of repayment. Put a spike through this bad boy's heart if you want financial freedom. Since consumer debt has the highest interest rates, you should start there. The first thing you must do is drastically reduce your spending. It hurts, but it's necessary. The rule of 72, as we've seen, causes your obligations to accrue at an absurd rate. There is no point in trying to save or invest your hard-earned money if you have a 10 or 20% interest rate. There is no way to get ahead of debt. Whatever it takes, whether it's setting up a side business, renting out a spare room, or declining invitations to upscale restaurants, do it. The next step is to prioritize your loan repayment by ranking them from highest to lowest interest rate. It's always a good idea to kill the vampire with the biggest hunger first when there are other hungry vampires around. That is paying the minimal amount to each month on all of your credit cards in order to avoid going into default and giving anything you don't need for necessities like rent to the vilest bloodsucker. Even while paying off your smallest loan could make you feel good, your main goal in this situation is freedom, not stroking your ego. Loan refinancing is the last step. Many credit card issuers let you transfer balances across cards and pay 0% interest for a specified period of time. That usually means a year. Use this choice if you're certain that you can use these alleged grace periods to pay off a loan in full. However, keep in mind that these businesses are betting on you not doing so, which would allow them to up the interest rate and hurt you. Remember that trying to become financially independent while carrying debt will drain your strength before you run a mile. It's the equivalent of trying to run a marathon while carrying a backpack full of bricks. You must slay that vampire if you want to increase your assets. Principle 4. Invest your money in experiences rather than things if you want to buy happiness. What connection exists between shopping and cocaine? Unexpectedly, quite a bit. Gaining the most benefit from the money you choose to spend on luxuries depends on your ability to recognize this link. However, let's first discuss about the brain before moving on. Dopamine, known as the pleasure molecule, rushes along your mesolimbic pathway, which is essentially your brain's primary highway to the nucleus accumbens, a sort of dopamine processing plant when something wonderful happens. This spike can be brought on by a stimulant like cocaine or by spending a lot of money on a Gucci handbag. The reward is a tremendous neurological high in both situations. It starts to get interesting from here. The nucleus accumbens responds to both positive and anticipatory stimuli, as was shown in a 2006 article in the journal Neuroimage. In other words, pleasure isn't just about dopamine levels in absolute terms, but also about how much dopamine our brains anticipate will arrive. Unfortunately, the brain keeps raising its expectations, which is bad news for those who are addicted to cocaine and shop a lot. People are constantly seeking out that one time, never to be repeated high, which is why they need ever-increasing doses of cocaine and ever-expensive handbags. Therefore, even if you are wealthy enough to support your purchasing habits, you won't be able to enjoy yourself. This might sound like the introduction to a quaint moral discourse about how happiness isn't something that can be purchased with money, but it's not. In actuality, it can't. It all depends on what you're spending your money on. Not all expenditures are created equal. Some have a greater impact than others. After starting her blog and seeing reader emails, Kristy recognized a pattern. People were unhappier the more items they had. Contrarily, people who owned fewer possessions and spent their money on experiences seemed to be generally content with their situation in life. This is due to the initial dopamine rush that comes with goods, which gradually wears off as your nucleus accumbens adjusts. Learning new talents or traveling are both enjoyable experiences that don't lose their appeal as quickly. You'll always be able to play the piano as long as you occasionally practice, and those vacation photos from Rome will always remind you of the week you spent while traveling abroad. Principle 5. The purchase of real estate is not the foolproof investment that it is portrayed to be. Many people are wary of taking on debt, but they frequently make one significant exception, a mortgage. According to conventional opinion, purchasing a home is a sensible investment in the future as well as a milestone in adulthood. You may always sell for a profit after all. Not really. Property actually has a lot of unanticipated expenses. Let's discuss figures. A family lives in their home on average for 9 years. Per the US Census Bureau, these families typically make investments in real estate with the hope that property values would increase. In the past, that rate has fluctuated with inflation, but for the purposes of this discussion, let's assume that prices rise steadily by 6% a year. Let's call our family, the Smiths, and we pay $500,000 for their home. You can multiply that by 9 times 6%. Or 9 years at 6% inflation to receive $844,739 in total. A handsome profit of $344,739 is now left. Wait a minute, the Smiths require a title search from the land registry office in order to purchase the property. That's $1,000. The $150 title recording charge. The attorney who handles the paperwork charges an additional $1,000. Finally, there is insurance. Rates differ around the US, but 0.5% of the home's value is very typical. The total cost, if paid annually for 9 years, is $22,500. A 1% annual property tax raises the cost by an additional $45,000. Realtors urge homeowners to set aside at least 1% of their home's value year for maintenance, which is what the Smiths do. The additional cost is $45,000. Even selling costs money. A fee of 6% of the selling price results in a total cost of $50,684. $10,137 is the land transfer tax, which is 1.2%. And there is a second attorney who also charges $1,000. This increases the total to $175,571 or 51% of the Smiths' revenue. However, we haven't yet covered interest. The Smiths, like most families, put down 10% cash and borrowed the rest from their bank. They have paid $162,033 in interest over a 9-year period. That amounts to a staggering 98% of the purchase price. And keep in mind that when we first started, we presupposed that the Smiths' home would appreciate by 6% annually. That is significantly higher than the US's actual inflation rate, which is around 2%. The Smiths would have lost money in the real world.
If you're liking the content of this video, please feel free to buy the book or get a free month of Audible. Both links are given in the description below. This will help our channel grow. Thank you.
Principle 6. If you're trying to decide whether to buy a house or do anything else with your money, use the rule of 150. In the last section, we did the math and discovered that, in the case of a hypothetical American family, the costs associated with purchasing, owning, and selling a home outweighed the benefits. The moral of the story, though, is that you should consider if buying a house is a wise decision for you in your particular circumstances. If you ask a realtor, they'll say it's all really easy. You should buy a home rather than renting if the monthly mortgage payment is equal to the rent for a comparable home or apartment. But if you look more closely, you'll see that it's a little more complicated. The rule of 150 can be used in this situation. This calculator will help you compare the true cost of house ownership with the amount you would save by staying put instead of renting. Only roughly half of your payments throughout the first 9 years of a typical 30-year mortgage go toward the loan itself. The other half is used to pay off interest on the loan. Now, extra ownership expenses like upkeep and insurance are nearly equivalent to the interest on a typical mortgage for the first 9 years, which is another 50%. Therefore, you must multiply your monthly mortgage payment by 150% in order to determine your actual monthly installments. When all your expenses are taken into consideration, that is how much your home will actually cost each month. Let's say your monthly mortgage payment is $1,500. Your actual cost is $2,250 when you compound that by 150%. It makes sense to continue renting if your rule of 150 monthly cost is greater than your rent. However, if it is smaller, you might want to consider buying. Kristy was residing in Toronto, the most expensive city in Canada, at the time she first thought about purchasing a home. 1-bedroom flats were selling for $1 million each, and prices were out of control. She instantly understood that she would not be able to purchase a property after following the rule of 150. That unintentionally uncorked a can of worms. What was she going to do with that nest egg if she wasn't going to spend her savings on real estate? Let's watch it in the upcoming sections. Principle 7. Betting on individual companies has less risk than index investing. Rich people purchase assets, middle-class people buy homes, and impoverished people buy things, according to the American business guru Robert Kiyosaki. He was saying that wealthy people invest their money in items that will increase their wealth. However, you do not have to be extremely wealthy to follow their example. There are essentially 2 types of investing. The first is to choose the greatest firms by using expensive research and sophisticated algorithms, just like Wall Street whizzes do. The second option is less expensive, easier to use, and most significantly, less dangerous. It's referred to as index investing. Consider it similar to placing a wager on a casino rather than a specific horse. The house always makes money regardless of who takes first place in the race. Let's examine that. A list of businesses organized by market capitalization, or the sum of the value of their publicly traded shares, is called an index. By making an investment in an index, you are essentially making a gamble on each of those publicly traded companies. You won't lose everything if one of the high-performing companies in the index fails because the index has the stock of several of them. You can only go bankrupt if every name on your index declares bankruptcy at the same time. That is incredibly unlikely. Why? Index investment, however, comes with a stylish built-in barometer. The index automatically adds more shares in a firm if its value increases, and vice versa. The index purchases more shares of a tech firm whose price jumps when it releases a world-beating smartphone. The index dumps shares if an automotive firm experiences financial difficulties and its stock falls. Additionally, a corporation is completely removed from the index when its valuation falls from 500 to 501. Major indices like the S&P 500, which is the ranking of the 500 largest firms, operate in this fashion because it is an extremely intuitive method of assessing the stock market as a whole. Index investing is beneficial to your finances as well. The premise is so straightforward that hiring a hands-on fund manager is not necessary. A typical index fund in the US, for instance, has fees of just 0.04%, which is 25 times less than what you would pay for an actively managed fund. There was no sales commission. Ask to have your savings invested in index funds at your neighborhood branch if you ever want to see your bank manager perspire. Principle 8. The key to early retirement is how much you save, not how much money you make. You've probably daydreamed idly about an early retirement, but when they check their financial balance, the majority of people soon abandon that notion. You just can't afford to retire until your mid-60s if you're not making a lot of money, right? Wrong. The amount of money you save instead of how much you earn determines when you can retire. If you earn and spend $1 million annually, you can never retire since you are totally dependent on your employment. On the other hand, if you earn $40,000 a year and spend $30,000, you already have a respectable savings rate of 25%. The majority of people save between 5 and 10% of their income, while their investment portfolios typically produce between 6 and 7% yearly, making 65 the usual retirement age. You'll need to put those figures into a spreadsheet and estimate 40 to 45 years of effort. Increase the amount you're saving in order to cut down on that time. This achieves two goals. It does this in two ways. First, it lowers your living expenses, which lowers the size of your goal portfolio, the sum of money you need to retire, and vice versa. Additionally, it adds more funds to that portfolio. Consider it a race where you are running faster and bringing the finish line closer. Even minor adjustments can have a significant impact. For instance, increasing your savings rate from 10% to 15% will cut 5 years off of your working life. Not yet persuaded? Let's examine the situation of a hypothetical couple we'll call Paul and Jillian. Let's say their combined yearly income is $62,175. The median family income in the US is that much. Taxes of 15.2% are subtracted, leaving $52,724.40. Let's say Paul and Jillian decided to increase their savings rate after watching this video. They use car sharing services like Zipcar, live in a modest apartment they can afford, and prepare their own meals. They invest $12,724.40 a year into their portfolio and pay $40,000 in total to cover their expenses. Let's assume that they are receiving a lowball interest rate of 6%. Paul and Jillian would have $1 million in 30 years even if they never received raises or better paying jobs. If they began at 24, they may retire at 54, which would be 11 years earlier than planned. Principle 9. Early retirement is easier to manage if your desired portfolio is smaller. How much savings are required in order to retire early? This precise question was raised by researchers in a seminal study that was published in the investing journal AAII in 1998. They simulated what would occur to a set of hypothetical retirees who withdrew certain amounts of their holdings each year following retirement using stock market data. If Alan, for instance, took 10% of his $500,000 nest fund each year, would he be able to cover expenses or would he run out of money? The solution is when your annual living expenditures are no more than 4% of the total worth of your portfolio. The safe withdrawal rate is what economists refer to. The size of your desired portfolio can be calculated by multiplying your annual expenses by this number, which is 25. You're looking at a $1 million portfolio if you require $40,000 a year. Sure, that's a lot of money. Yes, but don't let that discourage you. There are still other options. Consider a degree of financial independence. With a smaller portfolio, you can do this and enjoy the advantages of financial independence, such as flexibility and more free time. Assume your annual living expenses are $40,000 and you have a household income of $62,175 in the US. You would have a $12,000 annual budget gap if you switch to part-time job and made $28,000 after taxes. That number multiplied by 25 will give you your new goal portfolio, which is $30,000 you can transition into semi-retirement if you save that much. Geographic arbitrage is another option. This is the notion that you can work and make money in a nation with a strong currency, such as Germany or the US, and then spend your golden years in a nation with a weaker currency, such as Mexico or Thailand. For instance, Kristy and her husband Bryce learned during their journey to Vietnam that a nice lifestyle can be had there for only about $1,130 per month. If you are making the $150 monthly average pay in your area, it is unaffordable. Yet, if you are making the average monthly salary in the US, it is well within your means. So how does your current target portfolio look? The result of multiplying $1,130 by 12 is $13,560. Afterward, multiply that by 25 to get $339,000. You now have access to a wealth of tips to get you started on the path to financial independence. Now all you need to do is ask yourself a straightforward question. Which do you value more, acquiring expensive stuff or your freedom? You'll be able to make better financial judgments if you respond truthfully. In a nutshell, it all comes down to applying one fundamental principle: do the math. That entails disobeying sentimental advice like deciding to study a field you are passionate about rather than one that will earn you a living wage. It also entails defying social trends that are not appropriate for you. If you do the math, you might find that investing in the stock market is a better option for your money than purchasing a home and saddling yourself with debt for the rest of your life. You're preparing yourself for financial independence if you're growing your money while avoiding disastrous interest rates. The ultimate desire of early retirement is thus one step closer to becoming a reality.
Please like and share the video and